It's honestly a lot more work than I thought it would be. Just standing there on the bow of a skiff and, you're starting to see that sun come up, and then all of a sudden, like, you start to see rolling tarpon on the horizon. It's even kind of giving me goosebumps thinking about it right now. Just when you see them and, like, you just hear those pops on the water, like, they're ready, they're smacking. They're ready to get after it. They're ready to eat.
How about even like fly fishing in general? Like, what draws you to that versus regular open water fishing?
How do you cast when you're on one of them like floats?
Let's say Mike is getting started.
Yeah, what do you
does
need
Mike
to get started? For today's guest, we have Brandon Lash from the Colorado Springs store. We're going to talk a little fly fishing today.
Talk a lot of fly fishing, Mike.
A lot of fly fishing today.
Fly fishing 101, what you need to know, what you need to get.
Some bucket list trips, some adventures. It's all here for you today.
I'm one of our assistant store leaders here in our Colorado Springs SCHEELS store. I started with the company in October of 2020 and helped open our store in March of 2021. And now I supervise our camping, fly fishing, fishing, ice fishing, and air rifle shops. So definitely a lot going on there. Other than that, like, as far as hobbies go, I'm trying to think of something other than fly fishing that I do, but maybe eating. I would say that's probably another good hobby that I have other than fly fishing. So
yeah,
eating the catch.
I'm actually not that big of a fish eater.
Okay.
I would say if we had more walleyes here in Colorado, or maybe if I caught more walleyes on a fly, we'd be in a different ball game. But yeah, I would say definitely like more of a burger steak kind of grilling guy.
Sure.
So
there you go.
Maybe that's my other passion there is grilling. Barbecue.
There you go. Okay.
That's a good way to do it. Have you ever caught a walleye on a fly rod?
I haven't. I've had a couple buddies that have, but I personally never have. So
okay.
Maybe one of these days.
One of these days. What's your favorite fish to target?
Ooh. I'm gonna have to say it's a close tie between tarpon and bonefish. Definitely the eats from a tarpon bite is something that, that's kind of my addiction. That's what keeps me going. But when you do hook into a bonefish and they just take you to your backing from 0 to in 10 seconds, you're into your backing. So that's definitely another fish that I love to target. I would say if I had to fish for one fish for the rest of my life, it'd be bonefish. But if I'm going for bigs and going for big, strong jumps, big eats, definitely going to be tarpon on a fly.
Tarpon is one of my bucket list fish. I want to catch one so bad. I don't know if I'd necessarily do it on a fly rod. Maybe like after this podcast, you'll change my mind. But I was hoping we could do it in Florida this year because my parents are they go down in the winters. Like they're sick of the Fargo-Moorhead area in January, February. So they're down in Florida right now. But it's not really the best time of the year for it. So we decided to go the more easy luxury route to catch a bunch of fish and relax on like a 40-person charter boat instead of really like aggressively target them. So that's going to have to stay on my bucket list, but it's there. It's pretty high up there too. So what's it like to catch a tarpon?
Man, it's honestly a lot more work than I thought it would be. So we go to Key West every year. That's typically what we do. And we do 4 days of just specifically going for tarpon bonefish. And, one of these days, maybe I'll get lucky and see a permit and be able to throw a crab fly at them. But the most exciting thing is just standing there on the bow of a skiff and, you're starting to see that sun come up, and then all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, you just start to see rolling tarpon on the horizon. And, it's even kind of giving me goosebumps thinking about it right now. Just when you see them and, like you just hear those pops on the water, like, they're ready, they're smacking, they're ready to get after it. They're ready to eat. And so then you finally get in range, and then you're just able to load up on these fish and get a nice cast in there. And then you just see a big silver king come by, flash on your fly, and then it's just on. And then as soon as you give him that big strip set into its mouth, man, their acrobatics are just amazing. Seeing them just surface out of the water the way that they do and just take long bulldog runs, and man, it's a whole new outlook when you feel the power of some of these fish. Like, it is epic, absolutely epic.
That's awesome. Very, very cool.
How about even like fly fishing in general? Like what draws you to that versus, regular open water fishing?
Yeah. And I would say the big thing is that it's just a challenge. I think just the big thing too is like one, getting outdoors. Like I do spin fish every once in a while too. But I think it's just, the excitement, the challenges, and it's the whole process of everything. And you'll probably hear me talk a lot about just saltwater fishing in this sense, because, that's the one thing that I'm very passionate about. Like I do a lot of freshwater fishing there too, but it's the whole process. Like I'm 6 months out from going on a tarpon trip and I'm already gathering all my materials. I have my ices are just hot and ready right now. So I'm tying a bunch of flies, getting ready, getting new setups, just tying leaders, everything that I can to just make sure I have the most memorable and awesome experience. But also it's just the experience of being on the water. For me, my wife's a huge fly angler as well. So that's something that big passion of hers, big passion of mine. So something that we can share together and just creating special moments there. And I will have to say, like, out of all the fly fishing trips that I've been on and all the places that I've gone fly fishing, the scenery has never sucked.
Oh,
so, like,
absolutely.
You're in beautiful places.
Yeah. And, my wife and I, we always joke about that too. Like, why do we do this? Like, why do we go fly fishing instead of going to see some other exotic places in the world, like whether it's Paris or places in Europe? Like, man, I just think going fly fishing takes you to just some unseen places that some people will never have the chance to see. So that's what I say draws me into the fly fishing. It's the whole process and just the experience that it creates, and it's the challenges. And that's kind of what does it for me. It just really gets me going.
I know I've been on like hiking in Colorado and just, in a remote place, and there's someone is fly fishing. And like, it looks like peaceful, just serene, and he's doing this art. I'm like, like you said, all the scenery that you get to see too and experience. So. Mm-hmm. And I think Mike just signed himself up to be your third wheel on this trip.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Come on, let's get it.
Let me check the calendar. Yeah. We can make it happen. Oh, nice. So I'd like you to just walk us through the Colorado Springs fly shop. What do you all have in there? What are you most proud of? What are you most excited about? Yeah,
I mean, especially this year, like we definitely have probably our best assortment that we've ever had when it comes to our fly shop. So myself and a bunch of the other guys that have helped out with buying for all of our stores, we put a lot of work into just really figuring out like what's going to be best, not just for Colorado Springs market, but kind of for all the markets that we're in though too. But also we understand that fly fishing is something that people are going on destination trips for. And so like, do we have something for that? So when you kind of first look into our fly shop, I mean, the first thing that kind of catches you is just our large fly rod wall selection, if you will, but it's got beautiful de-young kind of tapestries behind it, all lit up, very, I guess like our fly reel case too is just like a big eye opener. But as far as like some of the new things that we've gotten to, like, I mean, we have everything that from beginner or somebody that wants to go chase salmon in Alaska, or even stuff that if you want to go chase, bonefish, and we do have some stuff for like saltwater applications too. But I would say the things that I'm most excited for right now, man, we got this Orvis Superfine graphite rod in. It's a 7.63 weight. It's just a premium technical creek trout fishing fly rod. So something brand new to our assortment this year that I'm pretty jazzed about because, I love catching big tarpon just as much as everyone else. But in the summertime, getting into those alpine lakes, those high alpine creek streams, stuff like that too. And just, some of those more technical areas where it requires you to have a shorter rod. That Orvis graphite rod is sweet, great balance, great sensitivity on it. So that's what I'm super excited about. I'm very excited too about another rod that we have coming in from our G Loomis. I know we've dabbled with G Loomis in the past, but we got another selection in there. So all the way from some of their IMX Pros, and then now we have one of their most premium rods, their Asquith. So just having that premium selection, that's it's a $1,200 rod, and most people are like, are you crazy? But for fly enthusiasts and extremists like myself, like that's something that I'm very passionate of. Just the artwork that goes into creating these rods is truly amazing. Another thing too, I'm going to keep rambling here because I'm pretty.
It's got a big list.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
this is good. Yeah,
just absorbing it, man.
So I like to do like floats as well, as far as like going down rivers with rafts, and big stillwater guy too. We have some great lakes here in Colorado that just offer some real good some stillwater fishing for, you know, big cut bows, big pike too. And it's typically something that we can't ice fish. So whenever that ice comes off and they open it up, it's ready to go. So we're going to have some Outcast pontoon boats on there. So they're just going to be like your little single man inflatables, but then also some full frame rafts that we're going to be dabbling with as well from Outcast. So, you know, fly fishing is just not going to be a land side thing where you're just kind of walking up and down. Now you're going to have the ability to kind of, you know, get out to some of those areas that you might not want to, or, you know, go do maybe a couple day float trip on the Colorado River, stuff like that. So another exciting thing. But then for your, you know, kind of more of your like backcountry style fly anglers, whether you're getting into like the canyons or high alpine lake stuff like that, Simms came out with a new flyweight boot right now. So I'm a huge advocate of the flyweight boot. I think it's a great boot. Now they just kind of revamped it, made it a little more durable. So awesome boot for those backcountry people that are getting after it there. And then, you know, for your people that are traveling too, we've kind of talked about how it's become a destination thing. Fishpond absolutely killed it with their Stormshadow roller bag. So you can put two rod tubes on the bottom of it, so they're fully protected, but just tons of pouches for different gear, waders, whatever. Any place that you're going on a destination trip, like, you're going to be able to fit into this bag. So a lot of cool stuff coming in. Very excited about our assortment. It's going to be pretty sweet.
Nice.
Awesome.
What size is that bag? Is that something that's like massive that will fit everything, or something that like you're going to put on your back when you're actually like hiking into these spots, or what?
No, it's going to be more of like a luggage style bag.
Okay.
So definitely more for that like travel side of things. But yeah, it kind of looks just like a regular suitcase on the outside, but, you know, to a fly angler, once you start diving in through those pockets and seeing those extra additives and accessories, it's the real deal.
Mm-hmm.
So super excited for it.
That's one thing the outdoor enthusiast loves is pockets. And what makes it even better is when the pockets are the right size in the right places.
Right.
Organization. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to put a fly rod tube in my regular suitcase and it just doesn't fit. And now I can put two of them in there lengthwise. It's amazing.
Game changer. Yeah.
So how much time would you say you spend like on land fly fishing versus like in a float or in a boat?
Oh, I would say I definitely am on land a lot more. So whenever I do try to go out on like floats or rafts or anything like that, typically it's, you know, I'm trying to go out with another person, or else I'm just like rowing a boat. But I would say it's probably more of a 70-30 split where I'm on land. And then, you know, if I'm doing any saltwater fishing work, you know, we're going to be on skiffs, stuff like that. But as far as like float trips, I might get 1 or 2 a year if I'm lucky. So.
Gotcha. How do you cast when you're on one of them like floats?
Yeah, so it can definitely be challenging. So, you know, that's why it's pretty crucial to have a full frame in there too, because then you can have, there's, you know, different float companies will have different attachments and stuff like that, but typically there's stabilizer bars there, so you can kind of lean on it. So you're kind of just pushing like your hips against it in the direction that you're going. And then just honestly, I know we kind of talked about it earlier, but little river runs through it, some shadow casts and just getting that fly out there, but just really trying to slam banks. But it's a tough balancing game, but one person rowing. And then again too, like when we're talking like rafting and rowing, like, you know, we're not fishing heavy rapids. We're fishing pretty like mellow areas. Like there might be some like class 2, class 3s, maybe even some 4s that you're going to be traveling through. But for the most part, it's going to be pretty chill water, lower flows, nothing too aggressive. So as far as like the balancing game, you're fine there. And then as soon as it's fish on, drop an anchor and start working on trying to fight that fish and get in the boat.
It's kind of a core workout, Mike.
Yeah, I believe that.
Well, it's not working for me. So.
Yeah, all comes back to that favorite activity of eating.
You're not lying. It just comes hand in hand, right?
No, but I just thought I've never fly fished before. I've always been really intrigued by it. But I was like, I don't even know how to cast just standing on ground. Like, how the heck would I do it on a float,
Yeah, and well, that's the one thing too. When you're on water, there's less stuff to hit. So, I mean, you got to think about it. If you're on shore, there's, backcasting into trees. There's a lot of stuff that's going on there. There's a lot of stuff that you can hit behind you. But when you're on a boat, there's just a little bit more. You definitely can get snagged on there. I remember on a float trip not too long ago, we were with one of my old buddies, and then my wife and her best friend, and her friend was just going absolutely nuts casting a fly rod, and then just sunk a size 8 streamer right into her leg. And here we are on the boat, and everyone's having a good time, and my wife's just got a massive streamer stuck in her leg. So it definitely does happen, but little control side of things, but also just position on the boat can be challenging, but it's a lot of fun. Different way to fish too.
Mm-hmm. Streamer, lure, is that the same thing?
Streamer, so in the fly world, if you will, right? So you have streamers, which are going to be like your bait fish pattern. So anytime you see like a hook or maybe like 2 sets of hooks, like an articulated fly, they're going to have just a bunch of feathers and hair on them to resemble like a bait fish, where like your nymphs and your dry flies, stuff like that, are going to be more like bugs and insects. So in fly fishing, everything is a fly. Worm, fly. Fish, fly. Egg, fly. It's all fly.
But that is one thing about fly fishing. It's all like very beautiful. Like you said, feathers and different things. It's
like some crazy when you think about it. Like you're like, hey, I'm going to take some of these chicken feathers, throw it on a hook, and I'm going to trick a fish to come eat it. Like it's kind of insanity when you think about it. And, but that's what makes it awesome.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, there's just really a lot of art and beauty involved to it. Just the way you described your shop to the places where you go fish. It just seems like there's a little bit more time and thought put into the fly side of things.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And especially like from the art form and everything like that. And I don't want to say that, spin fishing or anything like that is going to be a lot easier to get better at. I think it can be, but if somebody says that they can master fly fishing, they're absolutely crazy. It's just not possible. There's just so many different applications out there and just so many ways to do it. Like if you get tired of one thing, there's always something bigger and better out there. There's always a new cast. There's always a new way to fish. Like there's two-handed fly fishing, like two-handed rods that you use for fly fishing. There's just all kinds of different applications that you can. So, if you get bored with fly fishing, you're not doing it right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's say Mike is getting started. So fly products 101.
Yeah. What do you need to get started?
It's as simple as just a rod and reel combo and some flies. Like you can make it as crazy as you want. There's a lot of accessories, but you could walk into one of our SCHEELS locations right now, grab a fly and reel or fly rod and reel combo off our sales floor. It already comes lined with backing, leader, fly line. So really all you need to do is tie a fly on there and you can take it out and catch fish. So it's super minimal, and that's what I love about it. Like you don't have to spend a lot of money to get into it. We always think like, oh, fly fishermen, they're bougie. They got to spend all this money. They got to have all that cool stuff, which is true in some cases. But for getting started,
your wife's going to listen to this. She needs to know that, yes, she can buy that.
Yeah,
that $1,200 rod you're talking about. Yeah.
Right. So like you don't have to spend money getting into it. But other than that, other than a fly rod combo, it's just, finding that fly selection. And I say you could even start with a dozen flies and then you start getting into, the tippet. Tippet is basically just an extension of your leader. It's what us bougie fly fishermen like to call line or an additional leader. So it's the same thing. We just have different verbiage. Same thing, like we don't call it bobbers, it's strike indicators. So just to avoid some of that confusion as well. But yeah, so indicators, split shot, another word for sinkers, if you will, as well. But those are like kind of the small things that you need to get started. And when I say that, like that's more summertime specific, because if you start getting into, your early spring, later fall, that's when I would start looking into those waders. Like that would be the next step. Focus on the rod, focus on the reel. And then as you kind of start to expand your horizon when it comes to fly fishing, getting into a good set of waders and boots. And other than that, I would say a landing net. It's very hard to try and pull a fish in on a 10-foot noodle that you're fishing on. So having a good landing net, or even just something like, we have a great SCHEELS Outfitter landing net for $20. So super easy to get started. But I will say, like, once you do get started, that's where the addiction starts. And then you start getting into the fly tying, you start getting into, going on all these expensive trips, chasing dream fish. And it just never ends. But you can definitely get started for a couple $100 easy.
Perfect. Do you tie your own flies?
I do. I would do. It's a blessing and a curse at the same time, for sure.
Yeah. Can you just kind of like walk us through the basic process of that?
Yeah, I think it's even as simple as, like, there's just so many people that are out there tying flies, whether it's on YouTube or even like showing videos. So like, and they have all their recipes on it. It's just even like baking a cake. You have a printed list of these recipes. You go, you find the hooks, find bead eyes if that's what you're doing, hackle, feathers, you name it, wire, thread. It has all of that on there. So it kind of just lines up lists of like, hey, here's what you need. And then you just start kind of doing your own variations. You just start flipping up your different colors. And there's not a specific pattern out there that is like the end all be all. And that's what I think is awesome about fly tying too, is that it's just the creative side of things. Like for me, I use an SL12 short tarpon hook from Gamakatsu. That's just something that, like, I would prefer to fish with. It's something that I use, but if somebody else uses a different hook, like, it's probably still going to land some fish. But that's what's awesome about it, is that everyone's different. You can throw your own creative spin on there. Like, I ice fish too. And so tying ice fishing jigs, like, that's something that you can do as well. It's just, once you get into that world of creativity, it's just, it's adult arts and crafts is what I like to
Yeah. It's a good way to put it.
This would be a great in-store event.
Yeah,
have you guys ever done that?
Do you guys do any fly tying at the store?
Yeah, so we actually have. So every year we do our United Way campaign, and so we typically will try and host some things there, like, throughout the year. But I spent 7 years in the Army, so for me, it's nice getting involved into like the veteran side of things too. So we've had some veterans come in and hosted a fly tying night, cool, where we provided all the materials, all the fly tying devices. But we also collabed with Project Healing Waters to help out with that as well. So just a really cool event that we have had on. Granted, that's something that we're still building and something that I really want to exploit here, just because it's such a great opportunity and a great way to just get people involved in something different, because you can't always be out on the water. But when you're at your house, and, I'm sure you guys are familiar in Fargo, some of those snowy days that you don't really want to leave, just sitting at the house, having a cup of coffee and, tying some flies, watching YouTube.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, I've been there once or twice with the snowy days in Fargo. May or may not have been like yesterday. You got to have just like a great sense of satisfaction, though, to like come up with a fly that you want to design and make it and bring it out and just like catch a nice fish with it.
Yeah, and that's the fun part about it, is that, like kind of what I said earlier too, like, you're walking around in the middle of nowhere where there's water running through it. You have a 9-10 foot noodle of a fly rod, and you have a hook with just feathers and all that stuff on it. Like, it's crazy. Like, when you get a trick of fish for something that you've tied, like, man, like, how cool is that? You know what I mean? So for me, it's a huge accomplishment, and that's also kind of where the addiction starts. It's almost to the point, like, I'm going to tie something so ridiculous that I just want to see if I can catch a fish on it. And the thing is, 9 times out of 10, you probably will catch a fish, and you're just like, it's insane. And I remember I did a trip to Alaska a couple of years ago, and they had like a wall of shame. And
Okay.
Basically you had to catch 3 fish on this fly that you tied. And mind you, like, salmon will kind of eat anything during that spawning time frame too, where they're attacking everything. People were putting tying bottle caps with one chicken feather on there and throwing onto a hook, and they're catching salmon on it. Like, so it's pretty crazy. Like, you can almost do anything you want. Just the creativity it's out there. Like, but another really cool thing that we have coming too is, Umpqua made this. It's like this pizza fly, because you always get out there and you're not catching fish and you're like, man, I'm gonna chuck a cheeseburger out there at them. Well, now Umpqua came out with this pizza fly, and literally it's the shape of a pizza. It's got pepperonis on it and everything. But like, this is a signature tire that's, got his fly out there in Umpqua, and guess what? I can guarantee it catches fish. And you look at it, and you're like, I would eat that. So it's just cool. It just brings out a lot of creativity, and there's just a lot going on in the fly tying industry. It's a great community.
That's cool. Very cool. So when it comes to actually fly fishing, how do you like find productive versus unproductive water and like specific spots that you want to target? Is like as far as like reading the streams and things like that.
Yeah. The one thing that I will always say, and I think that you see it happen quite often on the river, is people are so quick to rush to the river. Cause like, and it, I was the same person. Like, man, I pull up to the river. Like I see one guy start to put his waders and boots on. Like, I'm going to get my waders and boots on faster so I can get in the water before him. So it's kind of like that competition, but like sometimes just sit back and watch. I think that's the biggest thing that you can do is like when you come up to a river, like, stay further back. Cause like, trout can see that, like fish can see that, they can see movement, they can sense it. So it's just kind of sitting back and watching. And when I started doing that, I feel like my hookup ratio and just my catching percentage just went up just because I could see fish moving. Because a lot of times too, like I would just tromp through the water and, now and then just see spooked fish. It's like, man, if you just take a step back, sit there for 5-10 minutes, just read the water, see if there's fish that are even, kind of just holding in pools or fish that are even rising. Because then that's going to tell me kind of what I need to throw too. If I see fish that are rising, I'm going to start throwing dry flies kind of right off the bat and see if I can trick one of them. Because typically too in the mornings, like that's when you're going to see more of your like bug hatches coming off and you can kind of tell what the insects are that are coming off. But other than that, I would say just, we have the saying for trout fly fishing too, that foam is home. And so it's going to be any section that there's some either riffles or running water, oxygenated water. Typically fish are going to be holding in some pockets behind that. So whether it's deep pools, and that's typically what you're going to find in like the summer months too, a lot of fish might be holding in those deep pools, rocky bottoms. But ultimately too, there's other predators out there that are trying to get them. So anywhere that there might be protection. So if there's logs, fishing in front of those logs, fishing behind those rocks that might create like little jetties in there too. A lot of times fish will hold in there. But oxygenated water, riffles, that's typically like what I'm going to be looking for. But I also enjoy sight fishing for fish. So especially when I can get into canyons, a lot of times I can see fish holding in pools and, I'm probably 200-300 feet above them. So then I'm going to start kind of scaling that canyon down to them and trying to get into there. But yeah, I would say those are probably the big things that I look for. But, if you're not finding any of that stuff, throw a fly in the water and just see. So. Mm-hmm.
No forward facing sonar here.
Yeah.
Unfortunately not. I tried to figure out a way that I could throw my live scope into the river, but just the ripples, there's too much interference, unfortunately.
Just your eyeballs, you gotta.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that would definitely be a challenge.
Yeah. But it's interesting about like some of the structures, that's similar, I guess, fish are fish.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I've never fly fished, but I've like done a decent amount of just like shallow river fishing. So I kind of understand like those concepts and stuff. So we've got a lot of small rivers and creeks and whatnot that'll have smallmouth bass in them around here. And it's like, awesome. Oh yeah, just look for those little shifts in current, or like if you see a log, toss behind that, So, and then, it's shallow everywhere, and then you see it's getting deep. Oh, there's probably a fish in that. So, but just kind of like exploring. It's really fun.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great just getting out on the river and walking around, kind of figuring things out.
Mm-hmm. I think you should tie your own flies for spin fishing.
For spin fishing?
And just see what happens.
You know what I really enjoy doing?
What's that?
Walking into the SCHEELS fishing shop
yes.
and finding one package that's the color I want and picking it off the shelf and bringing it to the
Well, I mean, you'd still buy all the stuff at SCHEELS, but yeah, that's probably
Yeah.
I
think a lot of that comes down.
Red colored chicken feathers. So.
yeah.
Oh, I bet you could make one.
You probably could.
I have faith in you. That's fun.
I thought you were going to say buying the gummy worms from SCHEELS and sticking one on. No.
Yeah, that would be something too.
We got bait shop. Yeah.
We do. Do you ever use live bait when you fly fish?
Oh man, that's sacrilegious right there.
Is it? I figured it was.
We'll have to cut that out.
Actually, I knew the answer already, but I just wanted to see your face when I asked it.
Yeah, that's not happening. I'm one of those. I wouldn't say. Oh, man, I even have a tough time throwing on, like a worm pattern or an egg pattern and stuff like that. But I will if I'm having a tough day. Like I said, throw the cheeseburger at them. Sometimes I'll throw an egg at them too.
You just got to get that layup fish.
The only time I would ever use live bait for fly fishing is if I have a fish on and another fish comes and eats it. That's the only way that I would ever.
Sure. by mishap.
Have you had that happen? You're reeling one in and a bigger one eats it?
I haven't had that happen, but if it did, it would be pretty cool.
That would be pretty sweet.
So very much a traditionalist then.
I would say so.
Well, and the sport itself, I would say is just very classic.
Yeah, it is. And because that's the thing, and not to say that anybody can go out there, throw some bait on there and catch a fish. Like, it's not necessarily the case, but like you said, it's just very traditional list, and just it's kind of old school. It's just a very traditional way of fishing, and I think we take pride in those artificial style of things, but also with live bait, like there's just not a lot of areas specifically in Colorado that you can use it. We're just at such a high altitude that a lot of them are invasive. So, just to kind of keep those gold medal streams and those trout waters clean and just protected, we just kind of avoid it too. So whether I was spin fishing and anything like that, a lot of times, like, you can't even use live bait in those scenarios. Like, you can use some non-aquatic baits like mealworms, worms, stuff like that. But as far as like true live bait, it's just not really a common thing in our river systems, just to kind of keep those trout streams pure.
Now, is fly fishing a separate license than spin fishing?
No, it's not. It's all kind of under the same thing too. Okay. So, you can have a single rod, 2 rod stamps. If you want to fish 2 fly rods at the same time, you can do that as well. But it's all going to be the same license, so nothing crazy there.
Sure.
How do you use 2 fly rods at the same time? Like, I don't even know how you do it.
I'm just trying to picture of like a trolling thing where I have rod holders out, and maybe my buddy's rowing. I just have 2 rods, and we're kind of trolling that way while he's rowing. That's the only way I can think of it, but I imagine it could work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll hold this while you do that. If you
can cast 2 of those at the same time, like that would be pretty epic.
Yeah, for sure. It's doable, but I wouldn't recommend.
Yeah, I'll try and master 1 first.
For sure. Me too.
What's a bucket list trip you have?
Ooh, it's funny. We're actually just talking about it today. I would say probably going to East Africa. There's an island called Seychelles. It's a beautiful island. I've only ever seen pictures of it, but they have some world-class flats fishing there. But they're home of the giant trevally. And so for me, like that, you talk about a tarpon. I don't know if you've ever seen videos of like giant trevally chasing down like bait fish and stuff like that. It is insane. They're so fast. They're so strong. And you talk about the weight and power of a tarpon, like 120-pound tarpon. Like, from what I've seen, it sounds like tarpon don't even compare to GTs. So I would say that would be one of my bucket list fish, is chasing those bad boys, throwing big poppers out for them, and trying to hook into one of those would be a dream.
That would be cool. What sort of setup would you need for that?
So you would probably need at a minimum an 11 weight. So to give you an idea, typical trout fishing, you're using a 5 weight rod. Tarpon, you're probably using a 10, 11 weight. For GTs, depending on size, you would use anywhere from an 11 to even a 13 weight. So, just a lot bigger rods, bigger backbones. Your fly reels, they're going to still be the same, but they're just going to have higher drag, poundage for drag on there too. And then, as far as leader material, I mean, you're probably looking at, somewhere anywhere from 50 to 120 pound leaders. Depending. So I know for like tarpon, I fish an 11 weight, and typically my leaders are going to consist of anywhere from 30, 40, 50, 60 pound sections. So whether it's my bite class or if it's my the butt of my tippet, that's typically the poundage that I'm using for those fish.
Oh.
Okay. So your lines will have like different weights at different lengths then?
Yeah. So in trout fishing, or like in a lot of the smaller leaders, we'll have a 5X leader. Well, the butt section is probably going to be like a 0X, to where it would be like a 15-pound test all the way down to like a 4-pound test. So we just try to do like different sections. But when you get into the saltwater fishing, you just have different bite classes, or you just have different classes, if you will. So like I'll have a butt class, which will typically connect me to my fly line. And then I'll have like a middle class. So if I do need to break off on a fish, because if it's getting chased down by another predatory fish, whether in just specifically in tarpon fishing, hammerheads love tarpon. So the last thing I want to do is be fighting a fish that's, getting chased around. So I can typically break off, whether that's, 20-pound leader. And then tarpon have very abrasive mouths too. So not so much teeth, but it's almost like a bass times 50 is what their mouth is going to feel like. So very sandpaperish. So I might want to use like a 50-pound bite class, so that way they just don't shred through it right off the bat. So that's typically what it's going to look like. You have tapered leaders just in smaller poundage, but then in order for us to have like kind of a taper or create these different classes, you're going to be tying just all different materials depending on like what your application is going to be.
Okay. And so do you have to physically tie all of these together, or do they make lines that like have that built in that you don't have to, like an easy button?
They have some of them, like you can go. So I know Rio, they make some like tarpon leaders and stuff like that. You can use them. I prefer not to. It's just more of a personal preference kind of thing. Like I feel pretty comfortable with like my knots and what I'm tying. So you can. The answer is yes, but most people will make their own leaders when they're getting into those saltwater applications, just because you can dial it in how you want.
Gotcha. What kind of knots do you use?
Typically with something like that, like I try to go as slim as I can. So it's typically going to be like a blood knot is going to be in there. You can do a double uni, stuff like that. But anything that's going to create kind of like a small profile. But as you get into like those bigger poundages, like your double unis are pretty thick. So using more of a blood knot is probably going to be a little bit more productive.
Okay. Interesting.
Is that how you tie your shoes?
No, not quite.
No, just kidding.
If you're doing a shoe tying knot, you're probably not going to have a good day.
No, I meant the blood knot on your shoes. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know.
You'll never
how to
take
tie
them
a
off.
blood knot.
Yeah.
I can do a double uni, but I'm not super familiar.
It's very similar.
Very similar. Okay. Nice.
Yeah. Most memorable experience?
Yeah. I'll kind of take a different route on this one too. So usually, my most memorable ones I would kind of consider to be saltwater fishing, but my wife and I and my dad, actually, we got the opportunity to go to, it's Derrick Sayou River Lodge. It's located right on the mouth of the Sayou River in Alaska. It's about 50 miles north of Yakutat, and then 50 miles south of Cordova. It could be swapped on, I can't remember right off the top of my head, but it's 50 miles in either direction from the closest city. So flew into Anchorage. From Anchorage, we went into Cordova. And so right there, we were supposed to fly directly to this lodge that we we're going to be staying at in Alaska. And the weather was just god awful, and it was not good. And so we had to take like a little puddle jumper, like a little bush plane, to get to this river lodge. So we land, and there's nothing that we can do. Like we're just kind of stuck there. Well, we didn't plan to get stuck there, because the flight that we had booked, or like a little puddle jumper bush plane, it was pretty much just through text, like, hey, we're here, can you come get us? And so with the weather being bad, they're like, we're gonna have to push it till tomorrow. Well, I'm sure you can imagine there's not a lot of hotels that are up there. So here we are, we're kind of like walking the town, and then this guy was like, yeah, I have a couple beds above a real estate building or a old real estate office. And we're like, done, we'll be there. So we stayed the night there, go out, get some food, some drinks. And all we want to do is fish. We just had a long flight. Like we're just, man, like, and plus time is limited, you know, we still have to get back to our everyday routines. And so we're hoping that we can get there as soon as possible. And thank goodness the next day they were able to come and pick us up. And I'm not too scared of flying, but man, being in a small plane like that had me a little nervous. And my wife's just like all giddy looking out the side of it. She's having the blast. And me, I'm just like, man, I hope this thing stays up in the air. And so we finally land there. And they're like, well, do you guys want food or anything? We're like, no, we want to go to the river. We want to go fish. And so we were there like right before the silver salmon run. And so it was just crazy. We take out a 4-wheeler and we're just in the back of this trailer, and it's just all kind of like moon dust, sand that's all around, but it's just like all of this, like either dried out riverbeds that we're going through or from the beach. Cause I mean, you're right at the mouth of the river. So like where all those ocean run salmon are starting to come in from the ocean and go into the river systems to spawn. Like that's what they're doing at this time. So we started catching some salmon, and, you know, as the days go by, tons of coastal brown bears out there, which was insane to see. And, you know, we started driving, and then all of a sudden coastal brown bear comes up and kind of starts chasing with us. And all of a sudden just stands up on its hind legs, looks at us, and then kind of peels off. So just a very unreal experience, and just something that's hard to describe is that you're fishing there for silver salmon, and they're, you know, 50, 100 feet away, there's coastal brown bear with a couple cubs that's fishing just as hard as you are. And it was just awesome because at the end of the day, you just fish so hard, come back, eat, go out, fish again. And it's just constantly repetitive with that. But yeah, we were able to bring back 200 pounds of salmon too. I got to spend it with my dad for a whole week. Got to spend it with my wife for a whole week. And just a great experience, just getting out there. And we always say that a little piece of our heart is left in Alaska, because it is truly just a special feeling. It's so unreal. And just to know that like you're in areas that's just so secluded, you're 50 miles away from the closest town. There's just nothing out there. Like you're just out there trying to thrive and survive. And but no, it was awesome. That was probably definitely my bucket list trip. And yeah, it was awesome.
I can like picture the bear, you know, there.
Yeah.
Like how picturesque. Yeah. That's awesome.
It's a crazy concept, just looking over like, what's up, bear? You catching anything today?
Yeah. Right.
Well, and it was funny too, because my dad was like trying to venture out and avoid casting into the wind. So he crossed the river. And so we're across the river fishing from him. And then all of a sudden out of the tree line, about 20 feet behind him, coastal brown bear stands up on hind legs and just staring at him. And we're just like, started clapping. We're like, go away, bear. Like just trying to make some noise, but finally peeled off, took off. But, you know, it's a little sketchy, but also very majestic at the same time. Yeah. It's truly an amazing place. So definitely go if you have the option.
Yeah, it sounds like a ton of fun. Yeah, that's one person I don't want to steal their fishing spot.
No, they can have my rod too if I have them hooked up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ugh. What's the biggest fish you ever got on a fly rod?
So the biggest fish I've ever hooked into, I've hooked about an 80-pound tarpon down in Key West. So that was probably the biggest fish that I've hooked into. Getting them to the boat can be tough because, like I said, these are some strong fish, and 9 times out of 10, you're either going to break off or you're going to bend the hook before you get them to the boat. I have brought tarpon to the boat, but as far as the biggest fish that I've caught landed on a fly rod, probably a 32-inch silver salmon that I caught up in Alaska. But other than that, all going to be tarpon. I think my biggest tarpon was probably like a 20-pounder that I've put hands on. But you'll jump them all the time. Like 80, 120-pound tarpon is possible. So
that's wild.
Now, do you eat salmon?
Oh yeah. Okay. I did bring home.
There we go. So you said you brought 200 pounds home. So I hope you.
We bought back 200 pounds.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We ate a lot of salmon, probably almost too much.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great those first couple of times, but then it's like time 30 that I've eaten salmon.
I still don't feel bad for you.
Yeah. No, it's delicious. I love smoked. It doesn't get much better than smoked
salmon. So
yeah, no, it's.
What was your favorite way to cook it?
Ooh, honestly, like an Asian style, kind of like sashimi style. But we would do like these. My wife would make this crispy rice in the air fryer. So she'd make the rice, put it in the fridge, and then cut it into like square sections, and then put it into the air fryer. And then we would just make almost like a little spicy salmon, like how you would in a sushi restaurant. Top that onto the crispy rice with a little bit of jalapeno. So good. So good.
Yeah.
I've made something similar to that before. So too. Good. Oh, smoked is good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Smoked salmon's definitely my go-to, but the crispy rice concoction you said there, that sounds pretty delicious too.
It's pretty dialed. I'm not going to lie. It's good.
Gosh, I just want to get out in the water now. I know it's still cold here.
Yeah, I'm still on that ice fishing mindset personally, but you're slowly reeling me back into the open water fishing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still kind of in ice mode right now too, because don't get me wrong, I love fly fishing in the wintertime, but when my guides are freezing, I can't even cast a fly rod. I'm definitely going to go hit the hard water. So
yeah, I'm sure that makes it a little bit more difficult.
It's not easy.
Any final tips for somebody that wants to get started into fly fishing?
I would say I'm going to kind of rip off a little bit from what Chris Pyra, he's one of our other assistant store leaders here. And I think he's done a podcast and previously. And the biggest thing is, if you want to get into fly fishing, you want to learn fly fishing, is only fish with the fly rod. And what I mean by that, and he gave a great example, is that, he would always try and learn how to fly fish, and he would bring his spin rod out there. And if it got too windy or just couldn't catch a fish, like start using a spin rod. But, I even am trying to take my own advice with that too, is, I enjoy spin fishing for bass, spin fishing for walleye. And, I love that when you ask me, have you ever caught a walleye on a fly rod? And it's like, no, because I never bring my fly rod when I go walleye fishing. And it's like, well, why not? So if that's something that you're going to get into, one, be patient with yourself. Also be ready to, dabble into this addiction of fly fishing, because it's pretty crazy and it's a lot of fun, but it can take up a lot of your time. But be patient with yourself and, throw your fly rod. That's the biggest tips and tricks that I can give you.
Awesome.
Just do it.
Exactly.
Just fish.
All right. Yep. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for your time and your knowledge, and good luck out there in the Colorado Springs store, and good luck on all those streams around you.